Hola, I'm Mahmoud Ibrahim, Senior Business Development Manager at Panduit, in charge of bringing to market Panduit's latest innovation in safe power distribution, Fault Managed Power System, or FMPS, the first Class 4 listed system in the US. Let me first explain what Class 4 means. Traditionally, we have three classes of power in the National Electrical Code in North America. Class 1, you're all familiar with. It's basically what's running inside our buildings. It's up to 600 volts. It has to run in conduit. It needs to be run by electricians. It's great for what we use today, but it's not safe because it can start a fire and it could shock someone if they touch it. And that's why we have to run it in conduit, and that's why you have an electrician install it. Class 2, you may be familiar with. It's limited to 100 watts and 60 volts. That's great because this limitation allows a low voltage installer to install the cable for this technology. The most common application of Class 2 is PoE, Power over Ethernet, where power in PoE is considered Class 2. The nice thing about it, because it can be installed by low voltage technicians, it doesn't have to be running in conduit, so it's fast and easy to deploy. However, it can't really go far. As you may know, PoE is limited to only 100 watts and only 100 meters. Then we have Class 3, limited to 100 volts and 100 watts and 150 volts, not very commonly used, mainly for home theater and sound system applications. But now in the US, we recently introduced Class 4. It's only been around for about a year and a half in the code now. And what it says is, now you can deploy or develop these Class 4 systems that deliver power. They can deliver 450 volts from the source. There is no limit on the power. However, you have to have a mechanism to detect faults if they were to occur. So the whole idea from Class 4 is we're going to send power from one source to an end remote location. And in the cable in which we're transmitting that power, we need to be able to detect any fault that happens. Faults like someone touching the cable, or a short circuit, or an arc, anything that could cause a fire or could cause a shock to someone. So these Class 4 systems are end-to-end systems. They're continuously looking for faults. And if any of these faults occur, again, like someone touching the cable, that system needs to turn off almost instantly so it doesn't harm the person that's touching it. If a short circuit occurs, that system needs to turn off again instantly so a fire doesn't start. So if you can develop a system that's Class 4 listed, and it has to apply to a standard or certify to a standard called UL 1400-1, which lists all these faults that I'm talking about, and it tells you how fast you need to respond to a fault. If you can develop a system and certify, you're considered Class 4, and now you get the benefits of this technology, which is what Panduit developed. So our Class 4 system is pushing 360 volts from the source. This high voltage allows you to go really long distances with the power. Our system can push up to 2 kilometers away. There is no limit on the power, but our system can push 600 watts per copper pair, so you get significant power over long distance, safely and efficiently. But you can also get the benefit now of the low voltage installation because it's safe. So now your low voltage contractor that's maybe already running fiber out to some remote location, let's say a switch at the edge, can also be running the copper cable for Class 4. It doesn't need to be running in conduit, so it makes it fast and easy to deploy. The other great thing about Class 4 now is, think about it, because you can provide power up to 2 kilometers away, you're providing power from one central location, like where we are here. So one centralized location of power, sending power 2 kilometers away, gives you now the benefit of centralizing, meaning you can now centrally back up your system with a UPS. And now every device that's up to 2 kilometers away from the source is backed up. Let me now kind of talk to you a little bit about what our product is and what it consists of. So the Panduit product has 4 pieces. It has the transmitter, which is what you're looking at here. It's a chassis that comes with a network management card. This network management card allows you to connect it to your local network, and you can then remotely monitor your system. You can even turn on and off components of the system. You can turn on and off power. You can also monitor your capacity. You can tell how much power is being consumed at some edge device and how much capacity you still have available if you want to add more power or more devices in the future. So we have the chassis, that's a 1RU unit. Then we have transmitter modules. These are these modules right here. You can have up to 9 of them per chassis. This is where all the magic happens. So from here, we're pushing out this class 4 power that is safe to touch. If you touch it, the power will turn off instantly. The third part of the system is power supply units. They're in the back of this chassis. You don't see it here, but in the back, there are 3 slots for power supply units to plug in. So the power supply unit takes AC power, and then in the front here, we convert it to class 4 power. And when we push it out over class 4 cable. The last piece of the system is in the receiver on the other side, which I'll show you in a second. So we push class 4 power out from here over cable that looks very much like this. Class 4 cable, anywhere from 16 to 18 gauge is your typical. And you can see now that you're running copper in the same pathway as your fiber. You don't need to be running this in conduit at all, because again, it's now considered a low voltage installation. We talked about the 4 parts of the system. The first 3, the transmitter chassis, the power supply unit, the transmitter modules, and now the 4th part is our receiver, which is what you're looking at. So this now allows us to talk about the applications. But first, let's touch on the capabilities of our receiver. So in any class 4 system for Panduit, you're going to have the transmitter, which is going to be sitting somewhere central in your building, like the head-end room or the MDF. And that's going to be providing power out to some remote locations. Every remote location, you're going to have a receiver. The receiver has to be connected to the transmitter using class 4 cable, which is what you're looking at here. This class 4 cable is going in, it's connected to the transmitter on the other side, going into the receiver. The receiver has 3 input channels and 3 output channels. 3 input channels, each input can connect to a single transmitter module, like the channel that I showed you. Each module outputs 600 watts. You have to account for losses in the cable and the distance that you're going until you get to the receiver. But kind of rule of thumb, if you're going about 400 meters using 16 gauge cable, you can expect to get about 530 watts out of the receiver. Now, if you have 3 channels connected, you aggregate 530 watts 3 times. That gives you the maximum capacity of the receiver, which is 1600 watts. This receiver outputs 48 volts. So you have a capacity of 1600 watts at 48 volts DC. And now you can imagine what kind of applications you can power with this type of device or this technology. What I'm showing you here is an example of extending the reach of PoE. You may be running into the situation today where you want to put PoE devices like access points, cameras, out in parking lots or in large venues, big resorts, that you're trying to extend the technology out to the edge. And you need to have a switch closer to that edge because you're limited to 100 meters with PoE. So now with Panduit's Class 4, you can extend that reach. You can put that receiver wherever you want out in the network. And you can easily now connect it with a Class 4 cable back to our transmitter. That's one application, extending the reach of PoE. You may be using passive optical LAN and needing to provide power out to ONTs. ONTs are exactly the same thing as the switch. So you can now have a receiver maybe with a cluster of ONTs in an enclosure together, and you're providing power to those ONTs at the edge. Other applications, you can think of DAS or remote radio units for carriers that are being put out on the edge. They're also, Panduit's Class 4 can be your way to power these. Really, the applications for this technology are limitless. And it's going to be up to your imagination where you can use Class 4 power. But the rule of thumb, or the way to think about it, is wherever you need to send fiber to a device, you're going to need power to that device. And now Class 4 power from Panduit can be your way to get power to that edge device. Just to recap real quick, the benefits of this technology. What we're giving you with Panduit's Fault Managed Power, or FMPS, are significant power. over really long distances, up to 2 kilometers, safely because it complies with the most recent standards in the US, and efficiently because we're pushing high voltage. What you get out of all this is fast and easy to install because it can be installed like a low voltage installation. Doesn't need an electrician to install it, so low voltage contractor. You don't need to run it in conduit. Its centralized architecture allows you to centrally back up your system. So now think of these remote locations. Let's say you have 20, 30, hundreds of these remote locations in an application or in a building. You can back them all up from one central source with a UPS. You don't have to now manage multiple UPSs all over your building, which are a pain to manage. You can also monitor and control. When you look at the capabilities of our network management card, you can see all the data that you can get. You can get voltages, temperatures, current, power, how much power is being consumed and how much capacity you have left. You can also turn things on and off. You can remotely turn this receiver off and back on if you want to, for example, troubleshoot and reboot this receiver, this switch. You can simply reboot our receiver and that will reboot any device that's connected to it. So the capabilities of this system are really endless, and we look to you to look at what applications you think you can use Class 4 in. I talked a lot about Class 4 and the US, but it's not going to pass me not to talk about Latin America. Because this standard is relatively new in the US, we're keeping an eye on Latin America and the different countries and how they're going to adopt these new standards. For example, in Canada, they already started looking at this new standard by UL called 1400-1 to adapt it into their new code. We're also looking at local codes in different countries around Latin America, trying to understand what they're going to do with this type of technology. Our hope is that they start adopting these standards so we can get our product certified and make it available into the Latin America market. Penwood is very excited about this new technology. We believe this is going to change the world of power distribution because it's safe power distribution. And the holy grail here, or the big picture, is efficient DC power distribution from source to sink. So what I'm talking about is, think of a future of sustainability and energy efficiency where you have renewable power like solar or wind providing you power. Normally, that power comes in as high voltage, about 380 volts. We're talking about taking renewable energy directly into battery banks, directly into a Class 4 system like this. Take high voltage DC directly, and then we're already pushing high voltage DC safely out to the edge devices. And you'll see in the future big vendors like switch manufacturers, server manufacturers coming up with their devices that directly take high voltage DC as well. So now you're distributing 380 volts across your network all the way to the end device. There is no AC to DC conversion, no energy efficiency losses whatsoever. That's what we're driving towards. That's where the future is going. And that's why we're so excited about this new technology that Penwood is heavily invested in and will continue to invest in over the coming years. Please continue to engage with us in P-Learning. Thank you for listening to us today, and reach out to your local Penwood representatives if you have any questions, or reach out to me directly if you want to learn more about Class 4 and Penwood's fault managed power system. Thank you.